Hello dear students, today the topic that I'm going to explain is chapter 6, Education and Social Reforms. This chapter is in page number 43 in your textbook. Alright, now here today the subtopics that I'm going to explain to you are the Indian education system, new education system, the objectives of introducing this new education system, the steps that were taken by the company to improve this new education system. Then fifth will be the growth of the national education. Sixth is the women reformers and what are the problems that were faced by the women and why these reformers had to step forward in order to help these women. All right. And then the seventh point will be the famous reformers. Okay. Now let me begin with the first point, that is the Indian education system. So those days the Indian education system was completely different from the education system that we are running now, because in those days the education system was based on religion, like Hindu, Islam. They were taught in the education system, and the students, they had no other option but they had to learn that through memorization. And even if they don't understand the meaning, they have to learn whatever was taught by their gurus, okay, by their teachers. All right, so that was the Indian education system that time. But later on, when the British rule came to India, the education system took a turn. It completely changed. So the new education system came into being. So what is a new education system? Here the British, they introduced a new language called the English language in the education system. And then English became so important in every education system ever since then, okay? And English also replaced all those classical languages like Sanskrit, Persian and Arabic. And those days in the Indian education system, they were mostly taught on law, about the society. However, when the new education system came, science and technology has replaced all those subjects whichever was taught before. All right, that is why the new education system took a new turn. All right, now what were the objectives for introducing this new education system? So when this British, when they were introducing this new education system, they had some certain things in their mind, and one of these objectives was, if they introduce this English language, then it will be very easy for them to communicate with the Indian people, right? And it would create a good relation among them. So that was one objective. Then the other objective was, if they introduce English, it would be very good for their market. Like for example, the Indians, as Macaulay has pointed out, that the Indians will be Indians only because of their color, or else their mindset, their interests, their intellectuals, it will become a British. So the capitalists thought that for them it will be so good, since the Indians will start giving more interest on the British lifestyles, on the Western lifestyles, and it will help in the growth of their market. And the Indians will look out for more Western products, right? So that was the other objective. Now the third objective was, if English was introduced in the new education system, they wouldn't have to go to Europe, they wouldn't have to go to England to bring any employees, because it was very expensive, it was very costly for them to do that. But if Indians got education in English, then it would have been so easy for them to get an employee at a very cheap price. They wouldn't have to pay much to those employees. So that was another objective, okay? And then the fourth objective for introducing this new education system was, they believed that if English was taught, then it would be easy for the Christian missionaries to inspire the Indians in believing the Christian religion, all right? Because those days the Hindus, the Indians, they were Hindus and they were following Islamic religions, right? So for them, in order to attract them from following Christianity, it was very important for them to learn English. So those were the objectives, all right? Now coming to the fourth point, that is the steps that were taken by the company in order to improve the English education, okay, the new system of education. So one of the step that was the Charter Act of 1813, all right. Now in this Charter Act of 1813, what they did, they brought English in the new education system. So earlier, like I mentioned, there was Sanskrit, there was Persian and Arabic. So these languages was replaced by English. It doesn't mean that it was completely ignored in the education system, but English was also added, and then English also became important subject. Then next step that was taken by the company was the Charter Act, okay, I'm still with the Charter Act. So they also decided to keep a certain amount that was 1 lakh rupees, and that was specially for the education of this English new system of education, all right. Now the second step that they took was in 1835. In 1835, Lord William Bentinck, he decided to use English as an official language for the court, for the administration, and also for diplomacy. However, Persian was also added for any diplomacy matters, all right. Now English became so important that from that moment onwards, so whenever a person is seeking for a government job, he has to have a knowledge of Western culture, he has to know an English language. So English became so important after Lord William Bentinck's 1835, the step that he took, all right. Then the third step was in in page number 44, you will find in 1854, this Sir Charles Wood, okay, Sir Charles Wood, he also gave more importance to English, and ever since then the other languages, the other system of education became less important and English became more important, all right. Then one more step that was taken by Charles Wood is that in this step what he did was since English became so important, he decided to bring the system of education from the London University, and he also set up universities in Calcutta, universities in Madras, and university in Bombay, and they also applied the system that was used in London universities, okay. So more and more people started taking admissions in these universities, and that also added to the importance of English. Now the fourth step that was taken was by Lord Ripon's Hunter Commission, that was in 1882, all right. Now here Lord Ripon, what he did was he gave importance to women, okay. He encouraged the women to take education, because those days in Indian culture the women were only confined to the walls. They were just working at home for their husband, for the children, for their parents, and they gave least importance to education. So Lord Ripon, he advised the women to come out from their homes and get education, and not only that, but he also pointed out that education should start from the primary level, from the lowest level, okay. So that were the steps taken by the company, okay. Now coming to the fifth point, that is the growth of national education. So how this national education came into being. Now here there are two incidences, that is the Swadeshi and the boycott movements. Now if you don't know what is a Swadeshi and a boycott movement, let me tell you. Swadeshi are Indian goods, okay, that were made in India, they are the products which were specially made by the Indians, and they were found in India, okay, from those products which were found in India. So they were the Swadeshi goods. Now this boycott movement means the Indians decided to stop using all the foreign products and all the foreign goods, and especially those goods which were coming from other countries, they decided to completely stop using that. So that was Swadeshi and boycott movement. Now here in this Swadeshi and boycott movement, it was the students, okay, who took a major role in this movement. Now when the students took part in this movement, the British government was so angry towards them. They were so disappointed that they were forced to leave the colleges. So many students were expelled from their colleges, many were expelled from the universities. However, there were also lecturers and teachers who also involved in this Swadeshi and boycott movements. So later on, the British government, they also asked those lecturers and teachers to resign from their position, and that way in 1906, okay, in 1906 in Calcutta, National College was set up, and Sir Aurobindo Ghosh, he was the principal of that college. So that time he invited all the students, those lecturers and all those teachers, whoever were expelled, whoever were forced to resign, he invited them to join this National College. Okay, so at the end we can say that this Swadeshi and boycott movement have a positive result because it led to the growth of national education. All right, so that is growth of national education. Now coming to the sixth one, that is women reforms. So why these women reforms started? Because in those days, in the ancient times, since the medieval times, even during the British rule, okay, the women were suffering a lot. They had to go through a lot of social evils, and these are some of the social evils that they had to go through. One was the female infanticide, low status was there, dowry system was there, child marriage, sati, widow remarriage, women education, there was no women education, then the Muslim women had to suffer a lot, and there was pressure on the working women. Okay, so these were some of the problems that were faced by women, and that is why the social reformers came up, okay, and they stepped out to uplift the lifestyles of women, because those days women were considered inferior in a society. They were treated so badly. They were only confined in a room, as like I mentioned earlier, and then they were not given any rights or equality. Okay, so let me explain in detail about what is female infanticide. Now this female infanticide is killing the girl child. Okay, killing the girl child the moment they came to the husband and the wife, the moment they come to know that they are going to give birth to a daughter, they used to kill her. Okay, so that was female infanticide. And why this female infanticide was so popular in the Indian society was because they feel that women were the burden in a society. They felt that women had to go through so many tortures, so many burden, and the parents, even before she grew up, they started feeling a heavy burden. That's why they decided to, that's why most of the husband and wife, before they bring up the girl child, they used to kill her. Okay, so that was female infanticide. And women were considered a shame for the family. They felt that those family, whoever give birth to a girl child, they felt that it was the moment that she is born, she brings a lot of burden to the family, and that is why female infanticide was so much in practice. Okay, now the second one is the low status. Now women in Indian society had a very low status. So what happens was, women, okay, when they are young, they always depend on their father, right? And then when they get married, they depend on their husband, and when they grow old, they depend on their sons. So women was like a burden for the family, and they were always treated inferior. None of the decisions were made by the women. It was the men who had to make all the decisions, and it was the women who had to accept whatever decisions are made, because she is not respected, and they feel that she was very inferior and she doesn't have any right or equality in a family or in a society. So that was the status of women. All right, now the third one is dowry system. Here in dowry system, what happened is, the girl child, okay, when she's sent off for a marriage, the family of the girl has to give a certain amount of money, or it could be a jewelry or a little some property to the groom's family. Okay, so why they do that? They feel that only if they give dowry, they are saving the girl child from her broken marriages. Okay, so that was why they practice this dowry. And whoever doesn't satisfy the needs of the groom's family, they used to send back the daughter, and then her entire life is finished. Okay, so she have to go through so much of social disgrace. She have to go through so much of the discrimination from the society and from the family, and in order to protect her marriage, they have to do this dowry. So dowry was so much in practice again. And another problem of women was the child marriage. Okay, now in this child marriage, what happens is the girl and the boy, okay, even before they grow old, even before they know each other, they are arranged for a marriage, and only when they grow up, they are met, the families sit together, and then their marriage ceremonies are held. So they are tied, their notes are tied at a very young age. Okay, so it was also a burden for the girl, right? Then coming to the sati system. Sati system was one of the most evil practices of the Indian society. Why? Because whenever her husband dies, she has to burn herself alive in the funeral pyre of her husband. Okay, so that was sati system. Then coming to widow remarriage. So in Indian society, widow remarriage was not practiced at all. A man can leave his wife and go for another marriage, but the women were not allowed to do that. Okay, so widow remarriage was not prevalent in the Indian society, and even after her husband dies, she cannot go and marry with any other man. However, for the man, he had every right to do that. Okay, so widow remarriage was not at all prevalent. Then coming to women education. The Indian family thought that the women do not need education at all, and so she have to always work, she have to always keep herself busy in the domestic chorus, and then she have to look after her family, she have to take care of her husband, her children, the in-laws. Okay, that was the duty of women, and education was least important for women. Okay, then coming to Muslim women, the problems that were faced by the Muslim women were whenever their husband, okay, whenever their husband wants to divorce them, they just have to utter the word 3 times, and then the divorce is simply done on the spot. Okay, so that was, and then there was practice of polygamy, where the husband can go and marry up to 4 times. Okay, whereas the women, once she is divorced, then she has to live her life as a widow her entire life. All right, so that was the problem faced by the women. Then coming to the pressure on the working women. Now those women, okay, whoever work, they were paid so less, even if they have to work equally with the male. Okay, even if they have to work for equal hours, she was paid very less just because she was considered inferior. Okay, so these were the problems that were faced in the Indian society, and later on the famous reformers, they came up. Okay, so the famous reformers were Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Swami Dayanand, and Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. Okay, so they were the social reformers, and they decided to improve the lifestyle of the women, and they worked so hard in order to abolish the sati system, the polygamy system. They also encouraged the women to come out from their homes and take education, because if the woman doesn't get education, how can she give education to her child, right? So that was the main objective of this social reformers. Okay, now in the next class, I will be explaining to you in detail about the social reformers, the names that I've mentioned just now. So as of now, that's all for today. And in the next class, we'll be continuing with the same topic. However, I will be proceeding with the remaining subtopics. Thank you very much. Take care.